Yes, now you divide by, what are we going to divide by really? Negative 12. And since it's a negative 12, what are we going to do? So this is a negative and a negative, so it's going to make it go this way, right? It's going to make the less than become greater than. So then those become 1, so that's x. And what is 12 divided by negative 12? Negative 1. So then we can graph it. Do you need to graph it? Do you need practice graphing? If you don't, then don't write this. But if you do, then write it. I'm assuming that you probably don't need practice on that. Do you guys agree? You don't need practice on that? Okay. So open or closed? Open. And then x is greater than negative 1. Which number is greater than negative 1? Negative 2 or 0? 0, okay. Good. Another one like that? Yeah. Crazy hard looking one?
Not crazy hard.
It's going to look crazy hard. It's not crazy hard, but it's going to look it. Buckle up. Do you guys need me to slow down? Are you guys on top of things? Okay, you're doing good. Okay, so negative 5n plus 6 is greater than or equal to negative 7 parentheses 5n minus 6 close parentheses minus 6n. What? Looks crazy hard. What would you times first? The parentheses, right? So what's actually being multiplied into the parentheses? So we're going to distribute the negative 7. Do we need to do anything with this left side? No. So I'm just going to rewrite it. Okay. Now what is negative 7 times 5n? Negative 35n. And then what is negative 7 times negative 6? Positive 42. And then do we have to times the negative 7 by this 6n? No, why not? Because it wasn't in the parentheses. So good. Minus 6n. Good. Okay. Now what? I would like to combine the like terms. I agree with that one. Do we need to do anything to this left side again? No. So I'm still going to write it again just so it stays with us. And then negative 35 plus negative 6. What's that? So you have 35 negatives and you get 6 more negatives. Negative 41. It's really tempting to do that. So be careful when you're doing the test not to fall into the trap of saying 35 minus 6 is 29, because that's really tempting to do. Okay, so now does that look a little bit better than what we started with? Okay. We want to get all the n's on one side. Which side do you think is easiest to have a letter on? Do you think it's easier to have the letter on the left side or the right side? I like it on the left side. So if I want to move these n's over to the left side, how am I going to do that?
You add 41.
Yeah. So we're going to add the opposite of negative 41, and that's a positive 41n. And can I add the 41 to the 6, or what am I really adding it to?
The 5.
To the 5. So it's plus 41n. Do you want to do two things at once so we have less writing?
Yeah.
Because those would cancel, right? So what are we going to have to do with the 6 then? The plus 6.
Subtract it.
Yeah, you want to move it over there, so we'd minus 6, minus 6. So the 6 and the negative 6 made a 0 pair. The negative 41 and the positive 41 made a 0 pair. In other words, they canceled out. What is negative 5 plus 41? Good. 36n is greater than or equal to 42 minus 6? 36. Not bad, huh?
Oh, and then
Say the last step.
you divide it by.
Yeah, divide by 36, right? Do we need to switch anything?
No.
No. So then n is greater than or equal to 1.
Wait, why don't we have to switch the sign?
Because it was not negative. We divided, but was what we
Oh.
divided by negative?
Oh,
Yeah, you seeing that?
yeah.
Yeah. So dividing's okay. You don't have to switch it unless what you divide by was negative. Okay. So then we can graph it. So I'm just going to put graph it. I'm just going to put graph because I think you know how to graph. Would you guys agree? So we'll just put that to remind yourselves to graph. Okay. So that was the third standard. We have one more standard to go, and then there are 10 questions on this test. So if we've done 1 through 6, how many questions are left? If there are 10 questions and we've covered 6 of them, 4. Okay, good. So that means the last part is 7 through 10. And if you want to, do you guys want to know what standard it is, or do you not care? Because this last standard is AREI 12. Okay.
Oh, you don't know.
So this is the graphing things. This is where you're graphing the line and shading above or below. So here's an example. Y is less than 1/3 x plus 2. And we know that we're going to have an x and y thing. So if you have your graph paper, that's why it works nice. X-axis, y-axis, like that. Okay. When we're graphing a number, what do we need to do first to graph it? So I mean a number, an equation, an inequality.
Multiply by the denominator.
No, I wouldn't do that.
No, you don't.
I wouldn't solve. I would start here on the y-axis. So we would go up to 2 on the y-axis. So up to 2 on the y-axis. So that's where I started. And then, if you want to put then, you can. You don't have to. Then we follow the slope. Our slope is 1/3, which means we're going to go up, because it's positive, we're going to go up 1 and then right 3. Yep. So from there, from this one point that we graphed, we go up 1 and then right 3. And then put another dot. Okay, and we're going to pause there before we do any line drawing yet. Because we want to be able to know which way we're going, like what kind of line we have and which way we're going to shade. So since it's like this, since it's a less than, do we want a solid or a dotted line?
Dotted.
Dotted, and how can you tell?
Because
Yeah, just like with these, that was an open circle right there. If there's no line underneath, it's a dotted line here. Okay, then I'll show you the way that works for both of them. If we made the y 0, basically like covering that up and pretend like your finger's 0, and the x is 0, then is 0, so that's this finger, is 0 less than the 2 that's left there? Is it?
Yes.
Yes, so if it is, that means that we do want to shade where the origin is. So let's start by drawing the line. I recommend getting another piece of paper. You can do a ruler. I have this ruler. And then what kind of line is it that we're supposed to draw again? Dotted. So dotted line, dashed line, same type of thing. And then because it was, we put in the zeros and it was true, then I do want to shade where the origin is. So that means I want to shade below the line. There, just like that. So when I'm grading these, I will be looking for this line being a dotted line, which means if you do it in pen and you mess up and then you have this solid line, it really is a pain to try to make it a dotted line. So please do these when you're doing the test. Please do these in pencil. Question?
So if it's above the origin, then you shade below.
Yeah, so what we did is we basically put in 0 in for x and 0 in for y. And if I did 1/3 times by 0, then it would just be 0, right? So 0 is less than 2 is true. So we are going to shade where the origin is. If it was false, we don't shade on the side where the origin is.
Oh, okay.
Does that make more sense? Yeah.
So, how do you know what the origin is?
The origin is always that point where the x-axis and the y-axis cross.
You just switch the variables for 0?
Yep, switch out the variables for 0, yep. Okay, and let's do another one. Is that good? Do you need me to leave this up here for a second?
Yeah.
Okay, next one, next graphing thing, 3x plus 6y is less than or equal to negative 12. And you can graph these. Let's start by drawing the line, like the axes. So y-axis, x-axis. I like to label them so it reminds me. And my favorite way to graph these, when the x and y are on the same side, favorite way to graph these is to do the intercepts way, which is that 0 comma something, something comma 0, cover up the x. And if I cover up the x, then what am I going to do to find that number? So like, how am I going to find the y right here? Yeah, so if I did 6y is less than or equal to negative 12, what am I going to have to do to solve for y? So you're going to do negative 12 divided by 6, and what do we get? Negative 2, good. And then when we cover up the y, that means we're going to do negative 12 divided by 3, which is what? Negative 4. And then we graph those 2 points. And you really have to remember how to graph. So 0, 2 means from the origin, we don't go left or right because that's what the 0 means, but then we go down 2. So that's our first point that we graph. And it might help maybe just for your sake if you just label that this is 0, negative 2, so that when you're going back and looking at this problem, you'll know like that this was like the 0 first means it goes on the y-axis. Then negative 4, 0 means it goes back 4 and up 0. So this is negative 4, 0. And then, so let's do, so since it's like this, do we want a solid or a dotted line? Solid. So we're going to draw a solid line. Okay, and then we're going to do that test point. So if I did 3 times 0 plus 6 times 0, what is the left side going to be?
0.
0. Is 0 less than or equal to negative 12? Is that a true statement or a false statement? That is false. Because 0 is not, see, negative 12 would be clear like down here. That is false, so we don't want to shade. Don't shade, oops, the origin. So this is the origin. We do not want to shade there, so we're going to shade below there.